Good evening, everyone. I know I signed up to give a TED Talk, but first, I just want to ask a member of the audience out on a date. Good evening, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Awesome. Will you want to tell the audience what your name is?
I'm Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi,
Say hi, Caroline, everyone.
Hi, Caroline.
What's up?
Caroline, I am a computer science major, which means I have the prospect of making a decent living in the future. I'm not very tall, I'm 5'6", but I'm great in country dancing. My ideal date is a long bike ride along the river. Would you want to go out on a date with me?
Sure.
She said yes, guys, give it up. Woo! Successful. That is the second yes that I have ever got from a girl. I came to Fort Worth, Texas 2.5 years ago from Vietnam to go to college. Before that, I never had a chance to pursue dating because I grew up in a very conservative culture. It was only after moving to a new country for college did I have the chance to pursue a romantic relationship. I was excited, ecstatic. However, I quickly found myself to be really bad at this dating game. Now, I have to say, due to the demographic characteristic of the school, interracial relationship was my best option at the time. We had a Vietnamese community at TCU, sure, but it's so close-knitted, I didn't want to date anyone in that community because it would seem like dating my own sister. And so, an interracial romantic relationship was the only option I had, and boy, was I bad. Discouraged, of course, by this fact, I also want to know why. Why? I want to know whether it is because of my different ethnicity that caused me to be so bad. And so, on the weekend, when people go out, instead of going out and trying to step up the game in the dating world, I hunch back on the computer, looking up on study, research, and paper to try to understand why I'm so bad, which is probably why I was bad in the first place. However, the results of those long weekends paid off. I learned a lot more about interracial relationship. This topic is intriguing because it reveals so much about the racial relation and the racism that still persists in the American society nowadays. Now, I really wanted to study international love with people of different nationality and sexual orientation, but for the scope of this talk, I'm just going to talk about the 4 big racial groups in the US and heterosexual relationship because I have the most information on that group. According to Pew Research Center, in 2010, roughly 15% of all the newlyweds in the US were interracial. That's a big step up compared to all the marriages in which only 8.4% were interracial. Now, some people would say that's not a big number. The US is considered the melting pot of the world, and because of its diversity, the number should be higher, right? I would argue the opposite. I would argue that interracial relationship in this country is still pretty hard, and there are a few reasons for that. The first reason is racial housing segregation. This is a map of our neighbor city, Dallas, and it maps the population. As you can see, each dot represents 120 people, and each color represents one of the 4 big racial groups. All the dots of the same color tend to group up in the same neighborhood. That's natural. We prefer to live among people who look like us, who share our values and beliefs. But what that does is that it prevents people from meeting people different from us. It's hard for us to even have friends of a different race, not mentioning to start pursuing a romantic relationship with one. The second reason is that there exists a hierarchy of racial attractiveness. The online dating site OkCupid did a study in 2009 in which they asked the user base to rate potential candidates. Those candidates belong to the 4 big racial groups. They then put the results onto the table. As you will see in the following slide, green signifies that the groups have been rated more favorably by the user base, and red means that they have been rated more negatively. As you can see here, when men rated women, this is the result. Asian and Latina women performed the best, being rated more favorably by all groups of men. That is followed by white women, and black women performed the worst, being rated negatively by all groups of men. When women rated men, the situation is a little bit different. White men performed the best, followed by Latino men, followed by black men, followed by Asian men. Now, I do realize this is only one study performed on one online dating site, OkCupid, which you probably don't even know that exists. However, if you were to look at the marriage rate between this group and these gender groups, a similar pattern happens. As you can see here, the information is also from Pew Research Center. According to the center, for whites and Latino, both men and women marry out at the same rate. When it comes to black, though, black men marry out way more often than do black women, and for Asians, the situation is reversed. Asian women marry out way more often than do Asian men. There is no consensus as to why this is a situation and as to why it happens. However, if you were to look at the stereotype perpetuated in the media when it comes to dating, you can kind of see why it's a thing. Whites are seen as the standard. Think of all the top actors and actresses you know, and most likely they're white. It's easier to imagine yourself with a white person. Latinos and Latinas perform this, in the dating world pretty well because they have the same Eurocentric as white people do, and they're also stereotyped to be the passionate Latin lover, which adds value to them on the market. Black men, despite being negatively rated on the OkCupid study, also perform pretty well because they're actually seen as more positive in the media. They're seen as more hyper-masculine, their large presence in sport all help them to create this perfect ideal image for a man. Similarly, Asian women fit the stereotype of a girlfriend in a traditional relationship. She is stereotyped to have a small physique, to be submissive, obedient in a relationship, and that is still something that is desirable in a relationship. Conversely, black women and Asian men do not fit these stereotypes. Black women are stereotyped to be loud, to be controlling, to be demanding in a relationship. And her beauty does not fit the Eurocentric beauty that we see because of her hair and because of her dark skin. Asian men, man, they're emasculated so much, it's hard to even think of them as men. There's no stereotype for the sexy Asian man. No, there's only two stock characters, and that's the martial artist who does not speak English, and that's the nerd who only speaks math, and that is not sexy in the dating world at all. And I don't even want to talk about the small genitalia stereotype because it's simply not true. Actually, I got it wrong. There is one Asian man who was very successful in dating a non-Asian woman, and he's actually pretty white, and they're widely known. I think you might know him. And yes, I'm talking about Glenn and Maggie from The Walking Dead. Yes, for those who don't know, this is a show about a post-apocalyptic world in which zombies have overtaken the world. It takes a deadly virus to turn the entire population into zombies for an Asian man to have a chance with a non-Asian girl. Fun fact about myself, in my free time, I like to develop strains of deadly virus that can turn people into flesh-eating zombies. Because I might get desperate. One of the consequences of the hierarchy of racial attractiveness is that it leads to social exchange in a relationship. The theory of social exchange theorized that race in an interracial relationship is seen as a commodity just as attractiveness, wealth, or fame. For example, if a man of color wants to date a white woman, he ought to be either way more richer, way more famous, way more attractive, or way more all the above than she is in order to justify the relationship. I think the way of looking at the relationship like that is inhumane because it suggests that there is something wrong with the ethnicity you're born with and that it's a defect and somehow you have to compensate with it with characteristic like money or fame. Externally, an interracial couple might also face societal disapproval. Interracial relationship was illegal 50 years ago until a couple, Richard and Mildred Loving, sued the state of Virginia so that they can get married legally. In a famous case, Loving v. Virginia, they finally gained the right for interracial couples to get married. But that was only 50 years ago. Now, because it is illegal 50 years ago, it's still a taboo nowadays, and it is not uncommon for interracial couples to get stares and to get criticism from society when they go out into the public sphere. However, not just the public, they also face problems from the closest people, their family. In the same year of the case, Loving v. Virginia, the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came out. The movie is about a white woman bringing her black boyfriend back to her family and receiving a lot of disapproval from her family. Like I said, it's a taboo 50 years ago. It's still taboo nowadays. People still have trouble with their family. And how can I assert that it's still a problem today? There's a WikiHow entry on how to introduce your partner of a different color to your parents. Whoops. It needs as much instruction as how to roll a burrito or how to write an essay an hour before the deadline. Because that many people have trouble with it and that many people have instruction with it. I would take a step back and say it makes sense though. This comes back to the first point of racial housing segregation. We like to live with people who look like us. We feel the most comfortable with people who are alike. In your family, you kind of expect the people to be the same as you. And so when you bring someone of a different race into the very intimate sphere that is your family, it makes sense that there will be some backlash and that your parents will not be very disapproval of the relationship. So it makes sense, but it adds strain and it makes it harder for interracial couples to make it. It seems like interracial relationship is pretty hard. Regular relationship is already pretty hard, right? I think. I never had one, I don't know. But because it is so hard, why bother adding another layer of difficulty to it? Why even bother to engage in one at all? This is not a trick question, by the way. I do have some pretty good answer. I just asked Caroline now. I don't want to shoot myself in the leg and ruin my chance before the first date. I do have a good answer. Just wait. But I think it matters because it's really hard to find someone to love. It's hard to find someone whom you care about, whom understand you, who want to spend time with you, whom you enjoy being with. And so if you do find a person like that, even if you're of a different race and that would bring problems, hold on to that person because it's well worth it. It's well worth it overcoming those problems because, again, it is hard to find someone to love. The second reason is that an interracial relationship is a gateway to discover an entire new world. In a regular relationship, you only get to discover a person. In an interracial one, you discover an entire new world. Chances are, if you don't look alike, you would have different cultures, the different food that you eat, different celebration that you party, different groups of friends that you hang out with, different clothes that you wear, even different ways that you do your hair. And chances are, if you don't look alike, you might have families from different parts of the country or even the world, so that justifies traveling. Which, by the way, Caroline, that's a picture of Da Nang Beach in Vietnam, one of the most beautiful beaches on the planet. So one of the perks of dating me will be the chance to visit that. I need all the help I can get, guys. The final reason, which I think is the most important, is that it gives you the chance to see the world through a different lens. This is a New York Times article about a white police officer in Baltimore a few days after the riot. It tells the story of Mr. Janu, who is a police officer in the Baltimore Police Department. He has a black wife, and together they have a biracial son. He voices his concern about the conversation he will need to have with his son when his son grows up. It's not going to be, don't break the law. It's going to be, act as if you have already broken the law, especially in front of the police. That is something that Mr. Janu, as a white gentleman, would never have to think about had he had a white son. If not, thanks to his interracial relationship with his wife, he would probably not understand what the youth that he sees on the street every day, how those people feel like. And I think that is significant. This is only one example, but it tells why interracial relationship matters. In that type of relationship, you get to care for, you get to understand, you get to love the person so much that you strive to understand what they are feeling like. You want to experience the pain that they get from being mistreated. You want to understand why they're mistreated. They want to know why people treat them differently from you. And I think that's big. It brings people together, It gives you the feeling, it gives you a glimpse of the world that they live in every day, and it gives you the experience that their group of people might have experienced every day. And that just makes you more empathetic, opens up your world, makes your heart bigger. Now, I can't urge everyone here to start dating interracially. That's not how love works, that's not how you should approach it. If you're simply dating a person of another color because you want to make a political statement, please don't, because understand that you're tokenizing the person, you're reducing them to a few characteristics, and you want their race as something, as an accessory. And that is very painful, so please don't. Again, love has to start from you sharing some commonalities, from you enjoying being together, from you trying to understand each other. It's just that if you do have a person like that, and that person happens to be of a different race, know that there'll be difficulties in dating the person. You'll have clash in the culture that you enjoy. People will look at you, your family might be disapproval, but it's worth it because it's a chance to learn more about the world, to explore yourself, to learn how to communicate. And for those who have already been in a relationship, or maybe too young to be in one, you can always learn from interracial couples. Learn how they talk about the differences. Learn how they love each other, not simply because they are alike, but because they are different, and they treasure that kind of difference. Now, I would love to stay and talk to you guys more about the topic, but I think I have a day to go on. Thank you. Thank you.